the messaging is consistent that, you know what, my best version of myself as an athlete will be a fueled and strong self. And that doesn't mean I have to be big. It doesn't mean I have to be small, but underfueling will get me there. And then starting from that place.
Welcome to the Eat for Endurance podcast. My name is Claire Shorenstein, and I'm a registered dietitian in New York City. Today's topic is one that I'm very excited about. It's fueling young athletes, and my guest is Lauren Antonucci of Nutrition Energy. She's an amazing dietitian. She's also a mom of 3 young kids, 2 sons, Cooper and Ryder, and daughter Mia. She's an avid runner and triathlete. She's completed 13 marathons, including New York and Boston, and numerous triathlons, including 3 Ironman. And she's recently getting back into the whole triathlon scene, as she will talk about. She's the owner and director of Nutrition Energy, which is a practice that I freelance at for the past few years. And she's clinically trained. She's also a certified diabetes educator and certified specialist in sports dietetics. Anyone who lives in New York City, I'm sure you've heard her name. She's super plugged into the New York City athletic community, including many local running and triathlon clubs and New York Roadrunners events. So I thought she would just be the perfect person, given her professional, athletic, and personal background, to talk about fueling young athletes. And of course, for me, I have a 2-year-old daughter. I'm currently, at time of recording, 37 weeks pregnant with another girl. So I'm all about learning more and talking about raising young, healthy, active kids. So I think you're really going to enjoy this discussion that we had. We talked about fueling young athletes, both from a personal standpoint, from a professional standpoint, some of the challenges that many parents face, whether it's dealing with your kids or even dealing with yourself and being a good role model. And I think you're really going to learn a lot from this discussion. I certainly enjoyed it and learned something myself. So without further ado, Lauren Antonucci.
Hey, Lauren, thanks for coming on the show today.
You're welcome, Claire. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, so today's topic, I think, is a very exciting one. It's fueling young athletes. And I'm defining young as through the collegiate level, since, pretty much still young adults. And we work both with, recreational and highly competitive athletes from pretty much adolescence onwards. So I thought that would be a really exciting topic for us to explore today. But before we dive into that, can you just share a little bit of background for my listeners as both an athlete yourself and a dietitian?
Sure. My life in a nutshell, as it pertains to nutrition and sports. Yes, I was a runner in high school and college for all 4 years, and then started doing marathons. And then I would say a natural progression to triathlons occurred. And I've been doing tris since 1999 and did my first Ironman in 2003, and love endurance sports, as you do. So I know you understand. I also am working on fueling and raising, along with my husband, our 3 young athletes who are now 13, 11, and 8. Although I will say the 13-year-old might prefer to consider himself not so young, but we will consider him young.
Sure. And what sports do they do?
My kids are really into mostly martial arts. The boys play some flag football. They all do some swimming. They're actually all doing their first kids try this weekend with me in Westchester. So we'll see how that goes. Should be great.
Awesome. And did you always know that you wanted to do sports nutrition when you were kind of exploring nutrition, just because that's always been an interest, or kind of what you got you into that?
Yeah, I think once I knew I wanted to be what a dietitian was, and that's what I wanted to do. Before that, I knew I wanted to do something in the health and wellness field, and in college didn't know what that was. So studied the brain, studied the gut, studied behavior until I found out nutrition. And once I started knowing that I was going into the path of nutrition, I was doing nutrition physiology research and trying to decide which aspect of nutrition and sport I wanted to go into. More of the research realm or the dissemination realm, and I clearly ended up on this side, which I love.
Yeah, awesome. And for my listeners who aren't local to New York City, Lauren is super plugged into the athlete scene here in New York. And of course, we work together at Nutrition Energy, which is your practice that you founded over a decade ago. Is that right?
Yeah, 2003. It's crazy.
Oh, wow. So everyone knows Lauren's name, and really excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thanks.
So in terms of, raising 3 young active kids, so we'll explore this topic a little on a little bit more of a personal level first before getting into it more professionally. What tips do you have for parents who want to role model healthy behaviors with food and exercise, since you are clearly doing a great job with that?
Oh, my goodness. Well, thank you. Well, first, I will say we can't do a good job with anything. So there are other things I am probably messing up tremendously. But I think the way you phrased the question, Claire, is fantastic, is the role modeling comes first. So the first thing I do when I'm working with adults with teen or young adult athletes, and also part of what I do when I start working with younger athletes who are still under their parents' influence in terms of food, is discussing with the parents what the food behaviors and cultures are at home. Now, most parents, especially you and I live and work in New York, I feel like most places, but definitely here, everyone's way too busy, doing way too much. No one has time to do extra things. But getting the kids as involved as possible, as early as possible, will actually help streamline things for parents. And I know, Claire, you know this as well. But I really try to work with clients to help their children choose some of the foods that will be served at breakfast, at lunch, at dinner, within the parents' guidelines. My husband and I are really active. It's been a part of my life since I think I was pretty much barely crawling. I'm just wired that way. So it's hard to say whether our children are also wired that way, or they saw it and it looks like we're having fun. So maybe they thought it was fun, or, I didn't sign them up for art class and maybe I should have, but I put them in swimming really young. Like that's just where I gravitated towards. So I don't know 100% which is the biggest influence, but I would say to parents who are athletes, we want to get our kids involved because we think it's really fun. I think it's really important to not push. My daughter used to say up until a few months ago when she decided she wanted to do this triathlon, "I'm sorry, Mommy, but I hate running." I said, "You don't have to be sorry. You do your martial arts. I like to run." So it's encouraging them, but not forcing too much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can definitely relate to that because Ariel's been to, a bunch of races already. She was at my husband's 50 miler. He crossed the finish line with her. At the last 10K I ran, she crossed the finish line with me. And every time she sees a runner, she shouts, "Go runners." And just,
cute.
It's very much a natural part of, her life. So I think that's a great thing. And my next question, how do you balance fun or treat foods with healthy eating? So kind of finding that balance of including them, but obviously they're not, so it's not something you want to have all the time. So how do you kind of work that in?
I mean, I think the way most of us, or maybe I'll speak for myself, the way I was raised and the way many of us might have been raised is, you eat your dinner, and if you do a good job at dinner and your parents are satisfied, they might reward you with a dessert. And I've really tried to go against that model, although, everyone does their best with what they know at the time. And so however we were brought up is how we were brought up. So we really try to look at things differently. And it's not that dessert is better than or something you earn or more important than your meal. But in order to be healthy, happy, balanced, energized people, we want to eat a wide variety of food. So if you were to choose, now you're like 9 months pregnant, so maybe this people will say that's why. But I would say this any day. If you chose to have your treat at breakfast, it really wouldn't matter. And as the kids get older, trying to stress to them, of course they say, "Mommy, this person has cookies in their sandwich. That person has this thing." Like, yes. And you can choose to have yours in your lunch, or you can choose to have yours after dinner. And those are choices. And really just in a really positive, low key way, which can be hard, trying to emphasize why are we interested in choosing healthy foods? Well, I know I personally am interested in choosing healthy foods and helping others do it because it makes me feel better. I'm more confident. I feel better about myself. My energy is increased. But I also feel really happy when I eat an ice cream cone, and that's okay. So just trying to send those messages, just like we do to clients, also to our children, that all things fit. No food is better than any other food. Like if you ate chicken all day, you wouldn't be healthy. If you ate broccoli all day, you wouldn't be healthy. And if you ate ice cream all day, you wouldn't. But a little of everything.
Yeah. And I'm still exploring that with Ariel for sure. She is such a sugar fiend and she loves ice cream and brownies and all the things that I love too, of course. But equally, I've tried to take an approach where, I'm not using it as a reward. I'm offering it alongside other things. And sometimes she wants fruit or like cherry tomatoes instead of an ice cream. She doesn't always choose the treat. Sometimes, often she does. But in those moments, I'm like, yes, huge victory. trying to raise an intuitive eater, which is, always a struggle.
Because as you and I see all the time, Claire, it's a lot of these, I don't want to say brainwashing, but it's what comes to mind, the thinking about food in specific ways, good and bad, first and second, that gets us into trouble and gets us feeling badly, which of course we don't want our kids to do. So you know what, if all things were equal and I were a 2-year-old living freely, eating whatever I want, sometimes I would choose the fruit that is delicious and I want it. And sometimes I want broccoli. And as the kids get older, and then for us as adults, same thing. And if you really pay attention, sometimes chicken sounds great and sometimes ice cream sounds great. So
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's move into today's topic. As I said, we both work with young athletes really at all levels. And of course, as we've been exploring a bit, it's hard enough to raise, really healthy, confident kids who eat well, they stay active, they're able to kind of navigate all these different body image and disordered eating issues, which often arise, especially in adolescence and college. So, how does playing sports, and particularly at this higher level that we both work with, heighten some of these challenges? Particularly with regard to eating well, eating enough, having a healthy perspective with, in terms of food and fueling, or what are some common themes that you see in your younger sports nutrition clients?
Great question. And I think, children grow up to be young adults, grow up to be adults, and we keep the same habits and thought and mind patterns throughout. So we see this throughout all ages, of course, in sports and athletes. I think it's really changing the expectation and the conversation. And we have these conversations, let's say, with the 12 or 15-year-old or 18-year-old or 21-year-old, and especially for the younger middle school, high school age, their parents are generally involved, really starting the conversation that a well-fueled athlete is the best that athlete will do. And so really just looking at, if sports are important, how do we fuel that? And so for some of it includes, we have these conversations, I'm sure you do as well all the time, with schools and what's provided at lunch or what they're allowed at lunch. And then it's up to, I had 2 of these conversations last week with 2 different athletes in 2 different sports. Okay, well, you can't bring lunch to school. School doesn't let you. Here are the options. You want to fuel your sport after school. This is what we have to work with. We've got to put this together. And by the end, the athletes were both able to come up with foods that they weren't previously eating, that maybe they didn't love, but we put them together in ways that they said, oh, you know what? Now I could eat it like that. If I mix this with that. And so hopefully both of them will resolve the problems they were having with the sports that led them to come to me in the first place. Of course, we see a lot of body image issues. That's never going to go away, unfortunately. But again, it's really getting to the coaches and getting to the parents to make sure we're speaking about these things in a really positive way, and that the messaging is consistent, that, my best version of myself as an athlete will be a fueled and strong self. And that doesn't mean I have to be big. It doesn't mean I have to be small, but underfueling won't get me there. And then starting from that place.
Yeah. And one of the things, speaking of coaches, I'm sure you've observed this as well, the team environment is not always conducive to fueling adequately, especially during these very long, hard practice sessions. And, maybe I had one client tell me that their coach wasn't allowing them to get out of the pool and, to eat or go to the bathroom or whatever it was, or maybe I'm mixing that up with something you told me. I forget, but I remember I had someone similar, or no one else. This is a very common one. Oh, well, no one else in my team is doing anything but drinking water. And I feel very self-conscious about it. And so it's trying to convince a 13-year-old competitive swimmer to eat something when no one else is doing it can be difficult. So, what are some ways to kind of handle that?
I think, convincing a 13, 15, 17-year-old to do anything, if nobody's wearing blue, they're not going to wear the color blue. Yeah. So now you're trying to get them to drink something. So I've had this question, of course, from athletes, from parents, from coaches, from the coaches who are trying to get kids to fuel and the kids aren't buying in. We want to look for 1 or 2 strong role models on the team. So I've been able to use that. And of course, everyone wants to be as good and strong and fast and awesome as the captains, so we can leverage some of that. If the athlete, let's say your swimmer, is not fueling because no one else is bringing the sports drink or the banana to the side of the pool deck, then, as a parent, and Ariella's little, but Cooper's 13. And as you get older, the kids get older, not us. As the kids get older, of course, we want to get them to assert themselves, which is very, very difficult for anyone to do. But so I would really try to encourage, let's say if it were my child or my athlete that I'm working with, to say, you know what, but you're going to fuel really well for your sport and no one else is doing this, but this is going to give you an edge. And if it were a different swimsuit that were going to give you an edge, you'd probably wear it, you know? So it's really just trying to empower them to talk to either the coach to get them to be allowed to do what they need to do, or to just get them to overcome some of that self-consciousness, which I've got to say will help them in the rest of their life, right? Because there's a lot of that peer pressure, self-consciousness. So really absolutely. Just trying to get them. And if they can't, then it's okay. What can we get in the locker room during that 4-minute time before you jump in the pool? And what can you get between the pool session and the dry land session, because you're changing and you're walking over to a new spot and there's an opportunity. So there are a lot of ways to work with it.
So it's just looking for opportunities.
Right. And in terms of the coach, you know, if you're the coach standing on the side of a pool coaching 50 or 200 kids, if they're getting in and out every 5 minutes to eat and use the bathroom, this is a disaster and it's a nightmare. Sure. They can't run a practice like that. So I think the best situations are maybe we know, more than one member of a team, or we may know a coach and we can help them work in, hey, your athletes will be better fueled if this. Can you make 1 2-minute period during this 2-hour practice where they can, get out and get their snack and do this? They'll perform better. And if you get the buy-in from the coach, of course, that's the best situation.
Do you talk to coaches very often for your athletes or for your own kids or anything?
For my own kids, yes. They know what I do, and I hope I try to be nice about it. But like if they ever make a statement like, don't eat cake, we have a tournament coming up. I'm like, Coach, they're like, oh, sorry. Don't eat too much cake the night before the tournament. I'm like, thank you. But they're generally good. The messaging there, they're usually making sure the kids are drinking and fueling, especially if they take more than one class. But I will speak to a coach. If I have a relationship with the whole team and the coach, then I'm speaking to them regularly. And if not, if the athlete and or parent, if it's appropriate, are interested in me reaching out by email or a phone call to just have a quick conversation and say, hey, here's how I'm trying to help fuel your athlete and how can we make this happen? This is what I want to know. Can we get a 2-minute break in there? I know this may be disruptive, but I really guarantee you it's going to help all of your swimmers feel better at the end of that second hour. And, can we make this happen? And then often from that place, you get somewhere.
Yeah. Awesome. What nutrients in particular are we really keeping an eye on for some of our younger athletes? I know it will vary, but just generally speaking, what are you typically focusing on?
Sure. I was like, is that a trick question? First thing, I know you don't. I know you don't.
I'm not trying to trick you, I promise.
No. But only because the first thing is going to be to make sure they're eating enough. Yeah. Yep. Which obviously So we want to make sure that the athlete is fueling and eating enough. And then, this is a wide range of people and athletes and sports and types. So some of them we're encouraging to eat more carbs and some of them we're encouraging to eat more protein. And so I think the first thing is we're encouraging them to eat enough. And to make it concise would be to eat a varied diet, meaning there are carbs, there are proteins, there are vegetables, there are fruits, and there are fats, and they are all sprinkled throughout the day somewhere. So that's the first thing. And if we can get that to happen, which I feel like that's enough for these kids who are tired when they leave for school, their lunch period's too short, they're talking to their friends on the way to practice, they forgot to eat, so that's enough. If we're at a higher level athlete, if we've gotten all that, then, and of course we've fueled before and after practices because we focus on those times specifically, then young adults, we're looking at iron, we're looking at calcium, those are the first 2 things. And then after that, it would be on a case-by-case basis, whether there's anything else we needed to really look at.
Got it. And in terms of, another kind of challenge that I've encountered is travel, especially like I have some clients that have to travel a long ways, whether it's to a practice because their sport isn't offered locally, or whether it's, camps or tournaments or all this type of stuff. And, of course, when you're in high school, say you're like a junior in high school, like the hardest year, you're also very academically inclined or whatever's going on, it can really be hard to stay on top of fueling and recovering well, and managing stress and sleep is a huge thing I see. People are staying up until like 1 a.m. doing their homework or whatever it is, and they have these grueling practices.
Yes.
What kind of suggestions are you making to kind of deal with all of this and help balance all these things?
I mean, again, it comes down to a lot of planning, which, let's say the teen years, that's not usually the best, strongest skill set in a teenager is, planning my food for the meet a week in advance, right? That's not what they're thinking about. So if we get the luxury of having an adult, a parent, a coach that is facilitating some of this. So I have a lot of swimmers that are in big meets and travel around the country, tennis players that travel around the country. If they're young enough and fortunate enough that a parent is coming, we've had parents pack cooler bags and pack grills and pack all kinds of things depending on whether they're flying, you obviously can't bring a grill, but, driving to somewhere in a hotel where they're going to make the food in the morning. We see this with our elite athletes who are adults who travel around the world as well. And I think the idea is to have as many foods that you're familiar with so nothing's going to get messed up when you get there. So if you want to bring your bagels or your bread, you want to bring your peanut butter, you want to bring your granola bars or energy bars. If you're bringing a sports drink, you want to pack that. Depending on how long we're going for and how vigorous, like the swim meet could be days, you might be packing a lot, and then trying to make sure that you get to a supermarket when you get there to pick up the other fresh things that you need. Our athletes that travel internationally, things get confiscated all the time, right? That's one of the biggest things with the Olympians. It's always in another country, and, they can't bring anything. And so they always end up with those kinds of issues.
What are some red flags that parents can watch out for in terms of underfueling, kind of an emergence of disordered eating patterns or anything like that?
Yeah.
And how can they start to kind of address that? I mean, I've literally had a client initially come in to lose weight after gaining weight, because of course, especially with the girls, they go through puberty, their body's changing. That's really hard for them. But then the same client lost too much weight, and then we were trying to gain weight for a long time. And so, it can be often this back and forth thing. I mean, that wasn't a disordered eating situation, but there are lots of challenges with bodies changing, and it's just such like a delicate topic and situation. And we're just trying to especially in the early days, if we can catch them before they get to that point, great, but often we don't. So what kind of advice do you have for parents with dealing with this?
Great question. Claire, the first thing I would say is if as a parent you have any question or doubt as to whether there's something going on that doesn't seem like a great relationship with food between your child and the food they're eating, I would get it addressed quickly and not make a big deal out of it. Just like anything, your kid falls down and scrapes their knee, you put a Band-Aid on it. You don't panic. Hopefully, you just put a Band-Aid on it. So this, I would say, if you have concerns, if your child is continually making excuses for why they don't eat more and more types of food. So first it's, I like animals, and so I'm not going to eat animals. And then it's, I think I get a stomach ache if I eat gluten, and so now I can't eat gluten. And then, I think I'm lactose. The more of these types of things, obviously, their nutritional status will be at risk if they're avoiding all of these foods. So we would want to figure out and have them meet with a dietitian to make sure they're eating enough. But then that dietitian hopefully would be someone who works with athletes and with athletes with disordered and troubled eating to help see if there are any reasons or red flags. So eliminating of more and more food groups would be a first red flag. And the second one would be either avoiding eating with friends and family or making excuses like, I just ate. Nope, I just ate. I'm too busy. I'm too tired. Now, some of those excuses may be legitimate, but if you think they're happening often and you are at all concerned, it's not that difficult, I would hope, to just bring it up quickly. Hey, you seem too busy. How can we help you get some food? What can I get around? And if that doesn't do it, see if you can, best case would be bring them to a sports dietitian at least once. Let someone talk to them, talk to you, and help you figure out what's going on so that you can address it. If it's a simple fix with we need certain foods, and let us ask them questions that as a parent you may not get the same response as we do when we start asking them which carbs, which fruits, which vegetables, and we may help get foods. And if not, to start picking up on if there's a disordered eating pattern developing, you definitely want to catch that sooner.
Do you find it helpful to do like we have in the office, of course, the resting metabolic rate test? Do you find it helpful to do that kind of testing on a young athlete just to kind of show them this is how much you need at baseline? You truly need to eat this much, or does bringing the issue of calories and numbers sometimes really complicate things for them?
Yes and yes. So absolutely. I mean, the reason why we have the metabolic rate test in the Nutrition Energy office is because it is such a valuable tool for us, and in a few very different ways. And the one you mentioned is definitely a great reason to have it. So in terms of anyone who's struggling, and again, today we're talking about, young and adolescent athletes, but this could go for anyone, anyone struggling with saying, okay, I really need to eat more, but I don't know how much more. And what if that's too much? Or I need to know, I'm afraid I might be eating too much if I increase. We test the metabolic rate. It takes 15 minutes. It just involves breathing, which we're all doing all day long anyway, but you're just breathing into this little mouthpiece. It measures all the oxygen that you breathe for 15 minutes, and it then tells us that person's metabolic rate. In other words, how much oxygen that person is breathing per minute, tells us how many calories that person is using per day. And what we do with that number, the first thing is just to say exactly as you did, okay, this is your baseline at rest, sitting here all day long doing nothing. This is how many calories you need. Now, you and I both shy away from using calories as ways of recommending food all day, but it's still a very useful number to have and something we can then help work off of, especially if there's any question by the athlete of, I'm afraid I'll be eating too much, or I'm afraid I'll gain weight. This kind of gives us a first step of, okay, we need to eat at least this, and let's see how you feel, and then let's go from there.
Yeah. Because sometimes, especially when we're trying to make sure, our athletes are eating enough, right? So what does that really mean? And we're trying to quantify that with, calorie ranges. But then at the same time, we're like, well, we don't want you to count calories. So it can get kind of tricky and confusing. And sometimes I'm even confused how to approach that, because I know that numbers are useful and they do have a use. And I know we both, do grams of carbs and protein and all that kind of stuff all the time. But at the same time, we don't want people to obsess and live and die by those numbers. So, especially to a younger athlete, explaining, if you're hungry, I still want you to eat, and I want you to, tune into your body's signals. But Absolutely. As you also know, we can't always trust our body's signals if you're not hungry,
right?
Especially if you are coming from a place of underfueling. So that's always a tricky thing to navigate. I'm still trying to figure that out with my own clients, depending on the client.
Well, and I think, and that's okay, right? We're all working on all kinds of things all the time and balancing for different individuals. Having that metabolic rate number as a baseline can be really helpful. And then as we do all the time, you kind of decide how much information is the right amount of information for yourself or for any person at a particular time. So to give a teen a whole bunch of numbers of calories and carbs and protein and fat to eat all day seems kind of crazy to me. Yeah. They do not need to be doing that. They should just do their math homework and stop doing math. And go eat food. But at the same time, really what we get to do as working with athletes as individuals is go through and say, okay, Tommy is really having trouble eating breakfast because he's super tired in the morning. Jose does not get his post-workout meal in because when he gets out of swim practice, it's 9 p.m. And Hannah is way too busy between after school and running over to the squash court. So she has no time for a snack. And then in those places say, okay, Jose, here are 6 quick things you can do there. Hannah, here are some ideas here. And really just plugging in, maybe if you're going to give them numbers for that one spot, like, all right, Hannah, if you're going to the store, because this is New York City and the kid might be going to the store, if you're going to buy something, it needs to either look like 2 pieces of bread with something between, or if it's a bar, it needs to have at least 40 grams of carbs. And then they can have those numbers. But for any time of day that we don't need to, I would really, try not to. Yeah, and of course, when we look at what they eat and they tell us how much they're eating, and we use our fake foods and our, the hand, is it bigger than the fist or smaller than a fist? And we find out, oh, you know what? Hannah's also not really getting enough protein throughout her day. So I'm just going to try to incorporate, all right, Hannah, where can we fit 2 more proteins and do it in a really organic, food-based way?
Yeah, that's exactly what I do, which of course is why we work together. We do a lot of the same stuff. Okay, one more question here along these lines of restrictive eating, becoming vegan vegetarian. I know that's one that we probably see a lot, especially among our teens.
Sure.
And a lot especially among our female clients. What are your kind of thoughts and approaches with these or any other restrictive diets that you've come across? And of course, there's nothing wrong with the vegan vegetarian diet. There are many very successful, very competitive athletes who follow plant-based diets, but sometimes when we see them in teens, we kind of have to wonder. That's something I always explore. Like, okay, let's ask you why you're doing this. So yeah, how do you approach that one?
I mean, I think we approach that like we do most things. I've had, as dietitians, people expect us to give certain answers, not to each other, but to non-dietitians, right? They expect you to say a certain thing. And so I've had people come up to me, oh, you make sure everyone's a vegetarian, right? I'm like, no. And then I've had other people come up like, you tell everyone they have to be keto, right? No, I'm a dietitian who can think for each individual what is their best plan. And so, of course, the first questions we want to ask are why. And in the teen years, it's a time of exploration. I remember being in 7th grade and sitting down one day and telling my parents, I'm old enough to make this choice. I am not eating this meat anymore. And I did that, but I had never really liked it. And so it was like finally an opportunity for me to go, that ham and that steak you've been making me eat my whole life that I don't love, I'm not doing it anymore. And I'm old enough. And they were like, oh, okay. And, everyone was confused. How are you going to get your protein? And then I played with it over years. It changed. But that was a way for me to just say, hey, I'm not eating ham and steak anymore. Like, I've never liked those.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then everything else, I ate all the rest and it was fine. But if it starts to become seemingly for another reason, and again, back to what I said before when you asked that first question, it's absolutely okay. I've had vegan Olympic runners in my office that were sent to my office for one purpose. Their coach and doctor said, go see Lauren. She'll tell you can't be vegan and be in the Olympics. And I said, I'm not going to say that because you're doing a great job and here's what you need. And I've worked with him for years and he always gets what he needs. And I see him every 6 months and we tweak things. But why would I make such a silly statement? He was doing great. So it's each person. If a person is having trouble meeting their needs because they've chosen to be vegetarian, vegan, it's a question based on, well, how are we going to meet your needs, right? And if it's a teen or adolescent and you can in any way think that, hey, this is kind of sounding like a reason to avoid eating a whole bunch of food we're putting on their plate. And it doesn't like that, if your kid was an animal lover their whole life and they stepped on an ant and they cried when they were 2, and then at 12 they say, Mommy, I love animals, I'm not eating meat, that makes complete sense to me. But if it kind of comes out of nowhere and there are other red flags, then I would, again, in a nonchalant way, just do something about it. And the easiest thing, especially for an athlete, I think, is to say, hey, you know what? Really great athletes have a nutritionist on their team. We're going to go visit one. And you visit one and you get somebody to help you talk that through. And there's no judgment or blame in you're not eating meat, so you have to go to a vegetarian doctor, dietitian. It's, hey, athletes do this. This is something we're offering to you. Let's go and have a conversation and, get another person to help you assess that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's kind of wrap up this section with talking about weight briefly. It's something that I've talked about before in this podcast, weight in athletes, and how it's often, this belief that you have to be lighter to be faster or perform better, which is, of course, not true all the time. There are certain, it depends on your sport too, of course. Yeah. How do you handle weight especially with younger athletes and maybe someone who's a healthy weight, if they can maybe they can lose a few pounds in a healthy way, but, how do you address that without it turning into something that is a problem?
Super tricky. I think the first thing is just acknowledging that it's a tricky subject and it can be completely easy and nonchalant for one athlete, and it can start a whole complicated situation in another athlete. So I would, like most of these things, approach it very gently. So let's say an example would be one of my athletes went away to sleepaway camp for 8 weeks, and this was a different camp, and the food was really good, and they put on, maybe it was about 15 pounds over the summer. Mm-hmm. If that happens to your kid, first thing, don't freak out, right? Freaking out's not going to help. So try not to freak out. Everything's going to be fine. And then try not to get them overly worried and try to just get back on track, maybe higher percentage of healthy foods because the season has started. Again, slanting it from a healthy way. And then if you can, involve a sports dietitian so we can help guide that sort of thing in those food choices. The things you don't want to do, you don't want to say you gained weight so you cannot eat these foods that the rest of the family is going to, or that your brother and sister are going to, because that will increase the chances that you'd be precipitating a bad relationship with body image and food. If someone needs to lose weight and we do it in a healthy, balanced way, it can be fine. But I've also had athletes referred to me, again, by parents or coaches or medical doctors saying, hey, they need to lose, the other swimmers or the other runners are 5 to 8 pounds lighter. They need to lose this weight in order to be a good swimmer. And so my first question is, who says they need to lose 8 pounds to be faster and to beat or be with that other swimmer? We don't know anything else about how much that swimmer is sleeping or eating or their genetics, but we've somehow decided that it was the 8 pounds. And you know what? For a swimmer, that's probably not it. For the runner, only if it's excess and if they're still fueling well. So I think it really requires a step back. And I've had athletes and they come in and I'm like, so you said your coach sent you here to lose 10 pounds. I just went through. I actually think we need to fuel you better as an athlete, and you will do really well. And most of the time, if we do an assessment and that is what it looks like the person needs, that's what the person needs. And it wasn't the 5 pounds or the 8 pound weight loss that somebody else thought it was. It was, wait, hold on. This person has opportunities to fuel better before the workout, or to take in recovery drinks and snacks after the workout, and to do a couple of other things. And that's where the gain comes from. So being really careful, everyone, this is a weird analogy, but like anyone who gets sick, they automatically assume it's food poisoning, and a lot of times not. You just picked up something random, like you didn't eat anything weird yesterday, you just picked up a bug. So everyone assumes, well, if I can in any way think that this person can lose 2 or 8 pounds, then that must be it, and that's not the case. So hopefully people are starting to change that conversation as well and realize, let's not jump to that.
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree. I think everybody quickly assumes it's weight that is either the cause of a performance gain or a reduction in performance. And it's really, there's so many other measures of progress, as we always say to our clients. And of course, the summer's tricky too, because a lot of these athletes are still in practice, but then of course you have, maybe some of our camp counselors, if they're, teenagers, or maybe they're traveling with their families on vacation.
Or they went off to college.
Yeah. Right? And they're not actually like people are taking breaks from very hard practice sessions, and then they go back to the pool or whatever they're doing. And they're like, oh my God, I gained weight and I'm doing terribly in the pool. I'm like, well, you also haven't been training, and you have to give yourself some chance for your fitness to catch up. And you can't just blame the weight.
Different. Right.
Yeah. So, and 100%. Also, oh, hey, you just started school. It's super stressful. You're like staying up late. You're not sleeping. Like there are all these other factors. So I think as parents, sometimes it's the parents that are freaking out, but a lot of times they're just reacting to their child freaking out, which freaks them out. And it's just kind of assuring both of them that, there are lots of different things going on here. So I think that's a really important point.
All of our kids are going to freak out. And what Arielle is freaking out about at her age is different from mine. And I don't want to embarrass mine by giving what could be 2 good stories of recent. But let's just say, school just started, and each one of my kids at some point in the past 2 weeks came home very upset about something that I knew was going to be completely fine soon, and was due to a whole bunch of factors that they weren't thinking about. And the only thing I could do as a parent was keep trying to tell them these other factors, whether they believed me at that point or not, and tell them that I knew it was going to be okay. And within a day or 3 or 5, they were. So this is the same. It's, you just keep trying to say, yeah, okay, maybe gained 5 pounds, 15 pounds freshman year or whatever happened. But you know what? You also are staying up late because you just started those AP classes, and you're commuting to a new school, and all of this stuff factors in. So let's not blame it on the wrong thing, and let's give it some time. And by the way, did you grab a piece of fruit with your breakfast? And it's really, I think, focusing, which I know, Claire, you and I both do all the time, instead of the athlete getting upset and or the parents getting upset and the knee-jerk reaction be slam on brakes, change diet completely. It's really just, okay, where can I incorporate more healthy eating philosophies or strategies so that I'm not in a situation where I'm eating things that I don't want to be because I wasn't prepared. So just making sure, is the breakfast made? Who's making the breakfast? They're not going to eat it at home. They have to take it with them. So all of those things happen. So the kid who says they want to lose weight, if they don't eat breakfast, what's going to happen at lunch? They won't make a healthy choice. I wouldn't either. So it really just trying to figure out which are the biggest limiters or determinants and kind of changing those. Yeah. Just like you would in your training.
Yeah. So 2 points there. Number one, I really look forward to the day that I can have like a rational or semi-rational discussion with my daughter, because trying to explain anything to her is hilarious.
It sinks in though, Claire. A lot of it sinks in. You'll find out in a few years.
No, I know. But you can't really negotiate with a 2-year-old terrorist. So that's number one. Number two is, going back to the role modeling part, these kids that maybe are, too busy, they wake up late, they're running to school, not eating breakfast or whatever. I often see with parents, parents are taking care of their kids, but not taking care of themselves.
Oh, yes.
So, and, we of course work with a lot of adult clients who are really not, they're putting themselves last. And, and just like, you put your oxygen mask on first before you help your kids, you really need to make sure that you are taking good care of yourself and also feeding yourself in front of your kids, role modeling that behavior, but also so that you're a better parent and better able to handle all these situations that we're dealing with. Right. So, so just like a quick reminder to the parents listening that, it really is important that you're prioritizing yourself as much as your children so that you're all in a better spot, So,
that's like one of the best pieces of parenting advice we can all repeat to ourselves over and over. Right. And it's so
hard to do. It's so hard to do. And I don't always do it successfully.
No, none of us do.
Especially, I mean, I only have one kid now, about to have 2, but I mean, people who have 3, 4, however many kids, I mean, God, it's hard kind of getting everyone ready in the morning and taking good care.
Well, Claire, when you have the new baby and you're a couple months in and you think it's crazy, I can lend you 1 or 2 of my kids for an hour. And then when they leave, you're going to feel really good. So,
oh my God, no thanks.
That's an offer. But in terms of the parent behavior, I mean, a lot of it, I have clients in here all the time, and the client is the adult, and whether their child is a child athlete or not, it's the same sort of thing, but even more if they're taking care of 1 or more children whose schedules are predicating their life, and we have to get them to and from practice and all over the place. And so a lot of times the adults aren't prioritizing. And of course, I always say, hey, I'm using the parent or the parent guilt card here. If you want your kids to do it, you should do it for you. Because if we don't put it that way, parents tend to put their kids first, which is lovely, but not always the right thing to do. So it's, hey, are you making any kind of breakfast or lunch or snack for your super awesome kid? Can you do it for yourself at the same time? And so your kid sees, because they hear, we know, ever curse in front of your kid and hear them at any age repeat it, they heard you even if you were 2 rooms away. So they hear everything we say, and they hear the way we talk about food. They hear the way we talk about our bodies. They hear us say, I'm so full, I think I'm going to puke. Like, those are statements we don't want to make in front of kids. Like, it should be, I feel full. Oh, I should stop so I feel good, right? And if you didn't, then maybe just don't make that statement out loud, or, oh, I'm too busy for breakfast. Instead of that, try to catch yourself. Oh, I'm so busy. My breakfast is going to be something I can grab, and here's yours, right? Yeah. And you do it for the kid. You do it for yourself. Eventually, your kid gets old enough, they can help model the good behavior back for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way we talk about our bodies, and especially, when you're raising daughters, but also sons too, if you're constantly on a diet, or you're, talking about how you don't like your body, or you're looking yourself in the mirror a certain way, or talking about your fat, it's something that you may not be conscious of how much you do that, but you have to be so careful,
right.
Especially when you're raising your kids and they're observing that behavior and they're observing that negativity
Totally.
that you have towards yourself. And yeah, I mean, it's something you don't really think about so much until you become a parent, I guess, but you have to be very self-conscious. You're constantly on a stage and just being very self-conscious about your own behaviors so that anything that is negative, you're not passing along to your kids. I mean, it's impossible not to pass something on, but you know what I mean?
Totally. But it's a good, again, parenting gives us a lot of opportunities, let's say. And opportunities, I'm saying from a health perspective in terms of modeling good behavior or changing a behavior I don't like about myself because now my kid is here and I don't want to have them see me doing this thing, which is skipping breakfast or dieting or complaining that my pants don't fit, whatever. Let's use those for now. So it's if I'm in my bedroom and I'm getting dressed and I put something on and I'm not feeling comfortable that day for whatever reason, and my daughter walks in, I'm conscious of the fact that she walked in, and it's not good for me to be dwelling on these negative thoughts anyway. So it might just be, oh, good morning, daughter. I'm changing my pants. These are not comfortable. Or I'm putting on pretty purple pants instead. And it's good for us to hear ourselves say, because the negative talk of, anything, whatever was happening in this example, I'm not fitting into my jeans anymore. It's not going to do us any good to wear those jeans or think about it all day. So just put on your pretty purple pants or your pretty black pants and try to say that and then move on. And it's better for us and it's better for them.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm kind of reminded of something from the intuitive eating book where it's like, you don't have to love every aspect of your body, but you need to show respect, you need to respect your body. And that's something that we want to kind of convey, especially around our kids. Anything else that you think is important that we haven't covered on the topic of fueling young athletes that you want to share with anybody?
I mean, I would just say the biggest thing I would stress to the parents of young athletes is, I'm sure you already know your kids are capable of more than you think. And so if their sport is important to them, which hopefully it is, hopefully it's not just important to the parents. So hopefully if their sport is important to them, they can take some responsibility at a pretty young age. So my 8-year-old, for a year or two, has been helping to assemble her snacks for after school because you know what? My husband and I both work and we have 3 kids, and it's a great way for them to have responsibility. And here are the snacks. And for after school, maybe you organize it. You take one from the refrigerator and one from this cabinet and let them take them. And in the beginning, you can check, hey, Johnny, what did you pick today, right? And, oh, great, you took an apple and a granola bar. And on another day, it might be, oh, you took 2 granola bars. Nope, silly. You take one from the fridge and one from the cabinet. Just like if they took, too many socks, you'd be like, too many socks, put some back. Really easy and really naturally. And then as they get older, they can take on more and more responsibility. So, parents are saying, well, I put granola bars in their swim bag every day, and then I see 10 home at the end of the week. Now, my kids have all kinds of food in their martial arts bag at the end of the week, too. So I don't know how to avoid that completely. But to get them to pick the snack they're bringing or to understand, hey, how'd you feel at the end of practice? Great. Okay. When your kid says they felt great, ask them a couple of questions that you want positive reinforcement on. Oh, did you bring your water bottle to school? Oh, great. Purposely linking them to the fact that they just told me they felt great at practice. If they say, oh, how was practice? I don't know. I had a headache. Same thing. Did you have that snack? Now, sometimes they'll say, yeah, I had the snack. Yeah, I drank water. No, I didn't feel well. Okay. They're not always linked. But if you can start asking those questions, get them to realize, oh, yeah, I had a headache. Guaranteed, my kid comes home with a headache. I can find one of 3 questions. Did you drink enough water? Did you eat a snack? One of them is going to be no. So I've got some positive reinforcement and get them thinking about it more because they have so much to think about too. And so do you. So it's got to be more on them, but we have to get them thinking about it.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to wrap things up with what I call my quick bites questions. So we'll just kind of rapid fire through these. What is your favorite meal or snack when you're in a hurry?
If I'm in a super quick hurry, I'm putting peanut butter and banana on some sort of bread product and running out the door. Let's say, daylight savings time. I moved my time. I didn't know. Quick meal for like dinner. My kids will always eat a couple of quick things. So turkey burgers and broccoli. That would be like the quick weekend or weekday meal, and everyone will eat it.
What about when you're not in a hurry?
If we're not in the hurry, am I cooking for my husband and I alone or the kids too?
Yeah, whatever. Either one.
My husband and I love to make Indian food. And this is if we have, maybe the kids are away for the weekend and we call it our Indian feast and we have a couple of cookbooks and we make everything from scratch and it smells so good and it's so delicious.
Yum.
I have to get faster at some of that.
So your kids don't like the Indian food?
Not yet.
Yeah. Ariel calls literally everything spicy, even things that are not spicy. So.
All kids does. Right.
What's your favorite post-race meal or snack?
Right. That's a question I always ask everyone in my interviews as well. And so I suppose I should be prepared for that. I mean, I always drink a protein recovery drink right after any of my hard workouts or snack, but that's not a favorite meal or snack. I'm always going to want something salty because I'm a marathon or triathlete. So even replacing salt. So nothing sugary, something salty. So it's got to be something that I can have with or on salt. It could be anything from soup to a burger with some fries and some ketchup. But it's got to be something salty, maybe some pickles.
Yum. Most bizarre or exotic food that you've ever tried?
Tried or almost tried. My kids tried bugs when we were in Cambodia, but I could not get myself to do it, so that does not count. I'm not a crazy exotic food animal, so if I say exotic, it's going to be like an exotic fruit, which is not really that exotic.
That'll count for this.
I think I took a bite of alligator in New Orleans. That's going to probably be it.
That counts.
Yeah.
How do you like your eggs cooked?
Scrambled with cheese and veggies if I can.
Do you drink, and if so, wine, beer, or liquor?
You know, I don't have a preference. It'll be whatever's going with the occasion at the event or time.
And a follow-up question, since you have 3 kids, did you find that your drinking increased with each child?
Ooh, with each child, that would be a problem. I mean, since having kids, I'm going to say yes, because between college, which I wasn't even that bad, between college and having kids, there was a lot of marathoning and triathlon going on. I don't think we can ever. And now there's more than that, but it didn't go up more after the second or third. I think it stayed where it was.
Got it. Yeah, no, my drinking definitely increased after Ariel, and my husband has been joking about how much we're going to drink after baby number 2, but we'll see how that goes. What food?
That's actually a pretty hot topic at this moment. I've seen a bunch of research on that.
Oh,
but
really?
Anyway, that's for another day. Yeah,
for another day. Yeah, what foods remind you of growing up? What are kind of your comfort foods?
Oh, I'm going to go with ice cream first and foremost. We ate a lot of ice cream growing up. I still love it. Carvel ice cream cakes and anything having to do with ice cream. Mm-hmm. Foods having to grow up is going to go both ways. We're going to go with that. I didn't really enjoy eating the meat when I was a kid, and that definitely was a vivid memory that I had before I was able to say, no, I'm not eating those items right now. I remember we ate a lot of canned vegetables. If we didn't have fresh, it was definitely non-negotiable that there was a vegetable every night. And I remember making pancakes a lot on the weekends because I could do it myself.
Awesome. And what's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Mint chocolate chip. That's the easiest question ever.
Favorite carbs?
Favorite carbs? Well, that one's more complicated. It's going to depend on the day. Potatoes, bagels, beans, fruit, quinoa. I don't really care.
So many
I like
good
most
ones.
Of them. Yeah, I think
so
I like
many
them
good
all.
ones.
Oats. I just ate oatmeal. I could go on.
Nice. And last but not least, top 3 items in gear that are most essential to your active lifestyle.
Well, the sports bra has got to be number 1 because I'm not going anywhere without that. And then I just got a new heart rate monitor because I've been doing triathlons again, like actually signing up for an event and going, and I'm going to say racing, but it's my first year back. So I got a triathlon watch, which actually has a triathlon button, which the last time I did triathlons in like 2003, I did not have that watch. Mm-hmm. And third piece of gear, my new bike shoes, because I also hadn't had bike shoes in a long time. And they've gotten way cooler where you just kind of open it and the whole thing unlaces and you don't have to deal with all of them. That was a big upgrade for me as I come back into the tri world.
Nice. And you recently completed the Escape to Alcatraz triathlon in the spring. What's on the horizon for you race-wise?
Yeah, the Escape from Alcatraz was something I had always wanted to do since I was out at Berkeley for grad school in California and saw that it was a thing. The race was amazing. Jumping off the boat and swim was super cool. I did a sprint this year, which was actually my first sprint try ever. I just sort of jumped into halves in the beginning. I am doing the Westchester Triathlon this Sunday.
Awesome. Are you signed up for anything else, or is that it for the season?
I think that's going to be it for now. And then we're we're back in kid mode, looking at high schools, getting them into things. And then next year is a new year.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time, Lauren. I know you're literally in 3 minutes about to see another client. We squeezed this in, so I appreciate it. And where can everyone find you on social media, online, elsewhere?
Sure. Thanks, Claire. It was a pleasure. I, too, am glad we squeezed it in. And Nutrition Energy is the name of my practice. And so if you want to find me or information about me, the handle is at Nutrition Energy on Instagram, at Nutrition Energy on Twitter. It's at Nutrition Energy anywhere. And then the website is the same. So just nutritionenergy.com. And if anyone has any questions, they can contact us through there.
Awesome. And as many of my clients know, I've been kind of channeling everyone towards you during my maternity leave. So everyone work with Lauren. She's fantastic. Or the other dietitians on staff. They're all great. Awesome. Well, thanks Lauren, and good luck with everything. I know you have a very busy fall ahead.
Well, good luck to you. You have a little bit of a busy fall ahead as well. I hope
yes.
Ariel loves her new sister from the get-go, which I'm sure she will, and everything goes well. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye now.
All right. Bye.
And that wraps up my discussion with Lauren Antonucci. As she mentioned, you can find her online at Nutrition Energy on social media or nutritionenergy.com. And you'll also see my profile on there, although I am on maternity leave from that practice for now. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, anything at all, please don't hesitate to get in touch. eatforendurance@gmail.com is how you can reach me. You can visit my website, eatforendurance.com. Social media, you can find me at eatforendurance. Thanks, guys, for listening. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Have a good one.